Good Sunday morning. It is Sunday, October 23rd, 8:30 a.m. and I am in a different location. We have our first visitor. I don't know if you can see that deer right up there staring back at me, but we have our first AM Excellence 66, and it's quite possible my daughter and or son are going to come out here and start screaming here in a second. But I am back home at my parents' house in Hollidaysburg, enjoying the nice, crisp country air, listening to the deer in the back. So I started this reading today, and I'm a sports fan, but not a crazy sports fan. Welcome, Bree. And the first couple sentences that I read this morning, and this was, I don't know what you want to call it, but the first couple sentences that I read this morning, and the book that I'm reading is called Above the Line, Lessons in Leadership and Life from a Championship Season by Urban Meyer, Ohio State University football coach. And the first lines that I read, the intro to this chapter today, said, "The most difficult place to play in the entire country is Beaver Stadium, prime time on Saturday night." And I was watching the game a little bit last night, not too much, and I woke up this morning to see that Penn State upset Ohio State. Now, there's a slight chance I could be completely wrong here, but that is what I'm taking from last night's events, and then also what I started the chapter reading this morning, which I thought was pretty, I don't know, ironic, foretelling, I don't know what you want to call it. So the title of the chapter today is called Are You Aligned? Alignment. And I use alignment, in my life, how I assess myself, are my thoughts and my words and my actions, are they aligned? Are they all focused on, do they all share traits? Do they all share characteristics? Or am I saying, hey, I train really hard, and then I'm not training at all? So, it's assessing yourself on those. Are you aligned in what you say and what you do and what you think? And Urban Meyer goes on to say, in order to achieve elite performance, alignment is essential. When a team is aligned, everyone understands and is fully committed to the team's purpose, culture, and strategy. The team's purpose, why are we here? What are we shooting for? The culture, what do we value? How do we act as a team? How do we act when, Urban Meyer uses his own system, but how do we act when we're faced with adversity? Is it a culture where we wear t-shirts? Is it a culture where we use foul language? What is that culture? In alignment, everyone understands and acts accordingly. And lastly, the strategy. How do you work? What are the things you do on a daily basis, a weekly basis, a monthly basis to ensure that? He goes on to say, in an aligned organization, every employee, from the executive suite to the loading dock, and this is extremely important, understands not only the strategies and goals of the business, here's the important part, but also how their individual contribution matters. So not only we are all focused towards this big goal and this big purpose and vision, okay, that's great. How do I have anything to do with that? And then, as he says, but also how each person, each individual contribution matters. Jocko Willink, who's another guy that I reference a lot, who speaks on leadership, talks about that all the time. So one of the questions that was posed to him is, hey, what if you're in the middle and management is telling you something and then you have to tell the person below you, what if you have to direct them and they don't buy into it? He said, well, first of all, I have to buy into it from the guy at the top. So I've got to go to him and he's got to explain to me how I matter in that equation. And then from there, I go to the guy below me and I explain to him how he matters in that equation. So there's a perfect alignment. There's a seamless transition of understanding your role and your role in the greater purpose. This is pretty neat. I'm certainly not a science guy, and I use the term osmosis often. I barely remember what it was, but he uses a physics term here. So he says, in physics, the principle of inertia dictates that objects in motion tend to stay in motion unless acted upon. Objects in rest stay at rest, period. That's the physics law. He says, inertia also applies to teams. Now, I can see a couple names of people that are watching, and I know there's family people involved here. So, people with families. So it's not just a team, it's your family. He says this, it also applies to teams/families. It requires a sufficient energy to get a group of players and a group of units to align around a common culture in pursuit of a common goal and to execute a common strategy. That energy is called leadership. So to get your team, to get your family focused I don't know if you can hear that ruckus in the background. To get your team, to get your family focused towards a common goal, you can't just say it. You have to say it and then be it. You have to show it to then encourage them to follow behind. Moving on to the next concept. And, you know, I stress this a lot, and it's not just for what I'm doing, what I'm building, but also there's a book, it's probably the biggest, one of the most, I don't know, famous books probably ever written, called Think and Grow Rich. I don't know if you call it personal development, I don't know if you call it management, business, but it's used for a variety of reasons. Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. And in it, he introduces this concept of masterminds. So a mastermind group is a group of people. Let's say you're a coach. A mastermind group could be a group of coaches who kind of sit around a round table and bring up issues and topics that they're dealing with. And then as a group, you hash it out. You talk through it and you figure out, you know, the best way to attack certain situations. And in this book, he also goes on to say, and this is a little off topic from what I'm reading now, but I'll get back to it. So I'm operating right now. So I have a certain, let's say my max, just for simplicity's sake, my max is 10, right? So Spaniard has a max of 10, period. Well, when I would bring another person into the equation, the idea, the philosophy, kind of the proven through experience fact is that when you bring another person of 10 value into that equation, your team potential, the genetic potential of your team is now not 20. It's maybe 30 or 40 or 50. And Napoleon Hill reiterates this in Think and Grow Rich. But the idea that when you come together with a group, and I'm going to get into that with the book, when you bring a group of like-minded people together, you don't just take the individual value of each person and add it together. It becomes exponentially better. So as you're living your daily life, surround yourself, even if it's just one other person who's like-minded like you, and then your genetic potential as a team to accomplish whatever it is you're accomplishing, to be a better mother, father, salesman, teacher, coach, whatever it is, it becomes that much more powerful and that much more influential. So that was just touching a little bit of idea about a mastermind and how it's a group of like-minded people who come together, they share a common purpose, and the power of that group. So then how that relates to this book. So what Urban Meyer says, he says, as I've already shared in this book, we invest heavily in training our unit leaders and our players on how to lead. So they don't just tell them how to lead, they show them how to lead. Yesterday, I believe I left off with, you know, people, they don't see your intentions, they see your behaviors. So he says we teach our players how to lead. We don't leave it to chance. And here's the super important part. And I've mentioned the idea of an AMX roundtable, AM Excellence roundtable. That's a really good point. So I had a comment that said one horse can pull 2,000 pounds, two horses together can pull 10,000 pounds. So that's an example. Don't know if that's true, but it was an awesome comment, Luke, and I hope it is true. But this idea of these AMX roundtables that I'm talking about with these discussions, AM Excellence taking it to the next level, Urban Meyer goes on to say, where am I at here? He says, in addition to the training sessions we hold, we are constantly talking about leadership. This is the key. And please understand, these are purposeful conversations that focus on the impact of leadership on our culture and the performance of the team. So Urban Meyer, who led a national championship team, is stating, please understand, the workshops are purposeful. It's great to teach, but the conversations, the purposeful conversations that focus on the impact of leadership on our culture and the performance of our team is the most important part. So maybe your conversation that you have isn't focused on leadership. Maybe it's you and your husband, you and your wife, you and your training partner sitting down and having a purposeful, intentional conversation. Hey, this is our goal. Our goal when we started training was to look better and feel better. How are we doing? Let's assess ourselves. Let's assess the situation. Because once you start assessing, you're going to get your mindset. You're going to gather, different perspective, insights, strategies, tactics, tips, whatever you want to call it, to then pursue that goal more effectively. There's a couple more things. So it's talking about alignment, making sure that people on your team are aligned and understand the purpose goal. And Urban Meyer had a terrible situation in Colorado State where he was an assistant coach, and then some other assistants started undermining the head coach, and it turned out into a bad situation. Everyone got fired. He lost his job. So if you're in a position where you're assembling a team, assembling a following, he goes on to say, I've never forgotten the wreckage that was caused at Colorado State because the staff wasn't in alignment and because of the disloyalty I witnessed. So again, he saw these other coaches starting to raise some basically a mutiny against the head coach, and they all got fired. He said, I've never lost the implications of that action. And he was on to say that I wish I had the self-leadership to say something, and I wish I had the courage to stop it before it happened, but I didn't. Again, humility. He said, I'm so committed to never going through anything like that again all these years later that I have a conversation with my coaches and their spouses before every season and let them know. So as a leader, remember this. He says, and I let them know that to me, disloyalty is insubordination. And if you are insubordinate, you are gone. That's one of the toughest elements of leadership is drawing that line between, yes, you want to help everybody, you want to give everyone a second chance, but you give someone a third chance and a fourth chance, then you're enabling. And I'm learning this. I'm 35. I don't hardly know as much as many leaders out there, but I am taking this statement from Urban Meyer, who is a proven leader, taking it as something I'm going to implement into my life. And one of my coaches, one of my trainers said, I'd rather have an uncomfortable 90-second conversation today than ruin a relationship in a year from now. So in whatever relationships that you're dealing with, consider that. It's uncomfortable, trust me. And part of a fighter's mindset motto is embrace uncomfortability. But those uncomfortable conversations can avoid longer, more damaging conflict in the future. And I want to read this last statement, little couple sentences here, that this book is an awesome book, and you don't really have to read it if you don't want. I would highly encourage you all to read it. But he says, and this epitomizes what I am living for, what I'm trying to pass on to people. One of the core messages I hope you take away from this book, and this is him speaking, is that the constant pursuit of knowledge and improvement, striving to make yourself better today than you were yesterday, is not merely an indispensable tenet for leaders to follow, but one of the great joys in life. It is the pursuit that motivates me every day to be a better husband, a better father, a better Christian, a better friend, and a better football coach. It's that constant, and now this is Spaniard talking, it is that constant pursuit of knowledge that gives me energy every single day to experience life, to live life, to travel everywhere I can, to try every food I can, to learn everything I can about. People who know me think, and I know there's one person listening who's going to laugh at this. People who know me think sometimes that I'm condescending when I ask so many questions, but I'm not. I'm just curious. I want to know. I want to learn. I want to get better today than I was yesterday. I hope you guys enjoyed this AM Excellence 66. Are you in alignment? Your thoughts match your words, match your actions. Is it all in alignment? What you stand for, what you do, what you say. Hope you all have a great Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon. If you're watching today, which is Sunday, October 23rd at 2 p.m., I'm going to be live streaming and live recording an episode of, thank you, Luke, episode of A Fighter's Mindset, the Spaniard podcast. I'm holding a live recording at the Hollidaysburg Area Public Library where my co-host and I, Dred, will do what we do privately, but in front of everybody. It'll show some of the behind the scenes of the podcast, how it's actually set up, what we discuss prior to hitting record, and how it flows once we hit record. And I'll also be streaming that via Facebook Live. So I'm basically, giving you an episode of the podcast to try out that if you like it. You can go to charlie-brenneman.com/podcast. You can hear all the episodes there. You can subscribe via iTunes and Stitcher. but it's going to be those intentional, purposeful conversations that I spent time talking about, and that Urban Meyer re-emphasized, and that Napoleon Hill and Think and Grow Rich emphasized. Surround yourself with the best. Become a part of those conversations. I'll see you live here or at the Hollidaysburg Public Library, 2 p.m. today. Take care, all.